Tony, thank you so much for being here. Such a great pleasure. You continue to churn out an important and inspiring body of work when it comes to what makes people tick, how do we feed human flourishing, and really importantly, how organizations can get a lot better at engaging, inspiring, focusing human beings in productive and meaningful ways. And I think in many ways, your latest book, The Way We're Working Isn't Working, says it all. And it's very much aligned with our mission at The Mix, where we're basically dedicated to creating organizations that are as resilient, as inventive, as inspiring, and as accountable as they need to be to meet the demands and the challenges of the 21st century. In many ways, to create organizations that are fit for the future. And I think the way to do that is to create organizations that are fundamentally fit for human beings. It's really a funny thing, I think, that we're at this moment in time where we're asking for the full imagination, passion, initiative, energy of every person inside every organization, and yet so much of organizational life goes against the grain of our basic humanity. And I'm venturing a guess that you share that same point of view, and that's really where I wanted to start with that dilemma, by defining the problem, because I think it's really that kind of clear understanding about what's really not working about the way that we're working that will help us move forward. So if you could kind of set up your understanding of the problem, what's not working about the way we're working, that would be a great place to start.
Well, let me say sort of two broad things, because I think there are some shifts that really need to occur for us to create a workplace that is engaging and encouraging people to bring all of themselves to work every day. The first issue is that for 200 years, since the early 1800s when the Industrial Revolution started, the prevailing ethic around work has been, and around capitalism and around free market economies, has been more, bigger, faster. And we've reached the natural limit of that because it works fine so long as the resources available to you are infinite. The external resources in the world, the planet's resources, but also your internal resources. But now, at the personal level, for the first time in human history, arguably, the demand in people's lives, particularly in the lives of people who are working in the knowledge economy, are exceeding their capacity. And so more, bigger, faster is going to, let me restate that. So more, bigger, faster just isn't a viable way to operate any longer. What we've done is we've modeled ourselves, incredible irony this, after the computers that we're meant to run, meaning we've made the assumption that we should operate at high speeds continuously for long periods of time, running multiple programs at the same time. But in fact, human beings are designed, and this is the core understanding that's critical, to pulse, to move between spending and renewing energy. But we don't value the renewal of energy as part of a performance equation in a world of more, bigger, faster. We've got to value that now because the challenges, as you said, are so much more complex, the demands are so much higher, that what ends up happening is that speed is the enemy of virtually everything that we need to thrive, that we need to thrive personally and that organizations need for us to be doing to thrive. So I'm talking about things like, creativity and empathy and nuance. All of these different qualities that separate human beings from other species are ones that are not available when you're moving continuously.
With that setup, I'm so struck by how parsimonious we are when it comes to human potential at work. In fact, I was driving in to this interview today, and I was listening to NPR, and there was a piece about the Peace Corps and the value of the Peace Corps and how we value it as a nation. And the argument was, so one guy was saying, look, the Peace Corps fundamentally changes people. You go into the Peace Corps, you come up against who you really are, you confront your values, you tap into a sense of purpose, you leave as this mature, fully realized human being. Gosh, I'd like a lot more of those in this country. But the other commenter on the program said, well, you know what, that's just not going to fly with the folks in Washington. If we really want to support the Peace Corps internationally, we have to make the argument that it is an engine of economic development. And my heart just kind of sank when I heard that, because I think, sure it is, and sure that's important, but I think the fact that we continually undervalue and devalue all of these aspects that you were just talking about, the other dimensions of human activity and human productivity, is just putting us at such a disadvantage. And I was wondering, you talk about this multi-dimensional approach to the whole human being as being the key to that sort of critical question that everybody has right now, which is, how do we engage people at work? There's no CEO in the world who won't say, I want better engagement among my people, and our engagement numbers are, in the toilet. But there are very few who I think are taking the kind of approach that you would advocate. So can you kind of unpack your view on what contributes to engagement?
The second shift that I would talk about as critical for organizations is this movement that needs to happen from trying to get more out of people as the sole focus of your attention to investing more systematically in meeting their core needs, so that you free them and you fuel them and you inspire them to bring more of themselves to work. And it turns out that human beings, and I didn't make this up, Aristotle figured it out a couple thousand years ago, and lots of other people have thought about it over the years, but there are really four core human needs. There's the physical need, which is for a quantity of energy. That's the kind of the platform, that's the foundation on which all the sources of energy or all the energy needs you have rests. And we have certainly devalued that in the workplace. We've assumed that it's your problem to figure out how to take care of your body, and if you do that on your own, it'll serve you well at work, and if you don't, your workplace won't worry much about it. But if they don't worry about it, then they won't get as much of you. Second need, core need, is emotional. In many ways, emotions run the show at work, but beneath consciousness too much of the time. And what's fascinating about emotions is to kind of take Dan Goleman's original work around emotional intelligence and then ask yourself the question, how would we actively train and teach people to manage themselves emotionally more skillfully, and what would that even look like? And we've struggled around that. And that's a lot of the attention we've given is to that issue, but the key there is that there are very, very specific emotions associated with high performance and with effectiveness. And that's no big surprise. If you ask anybody how they feel when they're performing at their best, they'll come up with the same set of a dozen or so adjectives that have in common the fact that they're high in energy and they're positive in energy. What's interesting is that when you don't feel that way, when you don't feel those high positive emotions, and all of us have significant times at work when we don't feel that way, you're suboptimal as a performer and you're suboptimal as a leader. So the idea that we can actively cultivate and have cultivated for us in organizations the emotions that serve performance is a critical need that must be served. The third one is the focus of your energy. That's the mental dimension. Because notwithstanding the fact that this isn't happening in the world we live in, the best way to be most productive, to do the deepest work in the most efficient way, is to focus on one thing at a time in an absorbed way for a significant period of time. And of course, attention is under siege, and we have fueled this crazy fury that technology has introduced into the world by wanting to operate faster and faster, get responses more and more quickly, and all at the expense of this kind of absorbed attention, which allows us to meet the third deeper need, which is to express ourselves in the richest and most creative way we can. And then the final source of energy is really the ultimate source of energy, which is the energy of purpose, spiritual energy, the energy derived from the experience that what you do really matters, from the sense that you're serving a purpose larger than yourself. Because when you feel what you're doing really matters, you bring tremendously more energy to the table. And it drives your behaviors across each of those other three dimensions, physical, emotional, mental, in the service of whatever it is you're committed to. So 4 sources of energy, you need them all. Any one that you have too little of becomes a problem in the system. This is not a new age idea that we should treat the whole person. It's a practical idea that simply says, if human beings are complex, make sure you're meeting all their needs, or they won't be able to fire on all cylinders.